Everyone. This one is working. Greetings. It's a little past 2. It's 2:09 in Canada, where I'm from. It's a little past noon over here, so I think good afternoon is in order, is okay. So good afternoon, everyone. First, thanks to this conference or colloquium's excellent coordinators, Benjamin, Ricardo, for really what has been a fantastic week. But I also want to thank their many colleagues at 17 Institute, but also here at the Fonoteca. And they're going to give some of us a tour of the archive this afternoon. So very excited about this. I want to thank those of you who are here in person with us today. Music making, critical thinking, community engaged people. And I don't think the term audience really captures who you are. So I thought music making, critical thinking, community engaged people would be more accurate. Most of you have talked already, have played music, and there are people following online. So thank you for joining us if you're joining us remotely. And thank you to our 6 panelists. I look forward to really lively conversation, discussion. I know some of you have exchanged quite a bit over the week, and this is a really nice opportunity, I think, to bring it all together, thinking about the future of the field. So on this 6th day of the conference, you should know who they are, but still, I think brief introductions would be helpful. So from Madrid, we have Wade Matthews, a sound artist with a penchant, an inclination for electroacoustics and dance. He was wearing a dance t-shirt yesterday and still is wearing it today. Author of several books on improvisation. I think some of them might have been outside yesterday. Yes. Will we see them again this afternoon?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. From Bogotá, we have Ricardo Arias, an experimentalist. Ricardo Festival. Yes, Ricardo. An experimentalist, festival maker, professor of sound art and time arts, which fascinating. Ana, who is Valencia, an artist whose music making intersects with curation and research, notably around the interplay between the philosophy and the politics of sound. From Córdoba, we have Gonzalo Biffarella, prolific and award-winning composer, an educator and guitarist that also ventures in the realm of multimedia arts. Franco Bellini, who's joining us, a prolific improviser and electroacousticians, an adjunct professor who's doing fascinating work with students inside and outside the classroom. I know because I had the great pleasure of meeting him on my first day here. Wednesday, we went for some food and drinks. From Tepoztlán, we have Ana Ruiz, a versatile pianist and composer whose practice and vision centers the need to champion and archive, and that's one thing maybe we can talk about today, sound experimentation and improvisation. I am going to be the moderator. I'm not Daniel Fischlin, as was indicated initially. I'm Eric Fillon, or Eric Fillon, or Eric Fillon. You can pronounce it whichever way you want. My first language is French, so it would be Eric Fillon. I was introduced a few days ago on Wednesday as the soon-to-be new director of IC, a position I'm really excited about. And I said then that I would also act here as a silence-producing machine in the spirit of this conference colloquium's theme. But thinking about what Daniel Fischlin said yesterday, that you can't always trust machines, I thought I would qualify what I said by underscoring that I am going to be and I am a sentient silence-producing machine. And so on this topic, I was very moved by what one of the participants in the video that Jason shared yesterday said about silence, right? So Jason in the panel on genealogies yesterday showed a video of Campus Friends, an initiative that he was behind in Guelph, and he played an excerpt, and one of the participants, when asked why she liked silence, she replied, "Because I know when I hear it." I thought this was a wonderful answer. To hear and be in silence, she seemed to suggest, and I would agree with her, is evidence that one listens, right? It's something that's active. And I like that. Why? Because listening is the forbidden art. And yet there are many listening paths out there for us to follow and engage on. And those of you who listened to the first session will know here that I'm borrowing from C's Hamlink and Rebecca Keynes, who incidentally made some really terrific comments or shared some terrific observations about silence and the need to listen. And so it's been a thrill for me to be here and to listen to all of you, to listen to your music, to listen to your ideas, formally in this room, although not always formally, and informally outside. Uh, it was also a pleasure, a thrill to listen to my colleagues from Guelph and what they see as the genealogies, plural, of the field. And Wade, I think you emphasized that yesterday, genealogies, plural. And now we're going to listen to our 5 panelists on the futures of the field. And I'd like to add the plural here, the futures of the field. So the panel title, I think, is a good one. It was well chosen. My Spanish is not even terrible, it's inexistent, but it is proyección. Is that okay? Projection and
Proyección.
thank you. Gracias. In Portuguese, projeção. In English, projection. In French, projection. A term that to me resonates across all 4 languages, not unlike improvisation. And this is what we are here for today, to discuss and reflect together across languages, across cultures, with an eye and an ear on the futures, again, plural, of improvisation in, and the last part is key, and beyond music and the arts. So presentation. So each of you will have 10 minutes. I'm not going to be policing severely, but if you could stay within a reasonable range between 8 or 12, that would be great, because we want to have time for a discussion amongst yourselves, but also with people here in the room and potentially people who are listening online. So what I'll do is I will pass around this little piece of paper that says 10 on it when you've reached 10 minutes. And that will mean politely mean try and wrap it up somewhat quickly. And again, in the interest of having enough time for a lively conversation. So we are going to go in the reversed order that's in the program. So Anna, you will start, then Franco, Gonzalo, Anna, Valencia, Ricardo, and Wade. So I'm going to pass the microphone.
Les voy a pasar el micrófono para que lo utilicen en sus presentaciones. Well, throughout all this week, I have learned so many things. I have listened to conferences that have taught me things that after so many years of living in improvisation, playing in many different places around the world, I haven't realized or I haven't felt this so important feeling of deep diving into improvisation, the role of people. But after reading my presentation, because I wrote it down, there are certain things that I found relevant and that I really want to say. I keep thinking that what I'm going to say is important. Somehow I am the representative, the Mexican representative of a whole movement of women that started in the year 2000. I started in 1973, and there were very little women. I mean, very few women who improvised in Mexico. Most of them were singers or would play in symphonic orchestras, but they wouldn't dare to step into becoming instrumentists, and of course, they were not daring to play free jazz. In the year 2000, more women started to enter free jazz, of course, very young women. And my work so far, or my role, has been learn, or helping them to learn, helping them to take over the scenery and express themselves, to give them the validation that they can express themselves. Of course, we haven't reached this parity of 50-50 men and women, but we keep growing, so I'm happy to be able to help this movement to move forward. I also think that there doesn't exist total silence in the world or in our minds, but in every concert I try to reach that point where I can move away from everything we are perceiving and maybe concentrating more on that sound that I want to play on that concert, uh, before reaching the nothing, like the blank space. Improvisation happens once. It's completely ephemeral. So every day we are building the future. Every day is today, but every day we're building the future. So this is a very deep personal work. And then you start playing with other people, you become excited, and you learn to listen in a different fashion. Boy Escalante said so many years ago in a book he wrote, it's like taking away the spider webs from your mind and from your ears. You can open yourself to something new, to the non-com to music that is not easy to hear. I have to find wonder of what is happening. I don't want necessarily a pleasant music. I want to feel something new, something experimental. Not the experiments, because someday they told me that my music was an experiment of sound. Like, what? No, it's experiencing, that is experiencing the what you heard from the day before, what that kept you thinking. That is an experience. You reach the scenario and then you say with sound what you wanted to say. So I'm always looking for more, looking forward, breaking the rules. And we live in the moment where we are an instrument of something bigger. We leave the self behind and enter into a path where each silence, each tone, each note is perfect. There's no mistake, there's no mundane act. It's the magic that happens. Of course, not always happens, let's be honest. And that's important to say. We have to be sensitive to it. Magic not always happens. I've been playing for 50 years, improvising and composing, and sometimes for pleasure, taking to the paper this music, this improvisation that came to my mind one night, and then taking that to the scenery. And I never play it the same way it's written. Those who play with me, they know that the next day the musical sheet is completely different, or I improvised, or I left a silent space, and things change all the time. And they know, those who work with me know that, because that's the magic I'm pursuing. And now that we are seeing the future, I feel that in Mexico we have all launched our CD, our cassette, and people are not buying it because youngsters do not have a recorder or it's somewhere to put a CD. They would rather turn on the radio or listen to music on the internet. And what they hear could be a piece, but then cha 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 appears and mambo appears. It's like super randomized music that you're not looking for. So it's important to find a good radio station where you can keep listening what you want to hear. That's why I think that maybe our future, when thinking about the future, maybe our future is playing live, to have more spaces, finding or creating more spaces to play live. Here in Mexico, we have three places: the neighborhood Portales, neighborhood Condesa, neighborhood Roma, and some small spaces downtown. But real spaces for improvisation? Not really. In the south, in the north part of the city, in Mexico City, that it's so big, so vast, we have 3 or 4 places where we can really play. So it's not enough. We need to find, we need to open more spaces, more places, and making noise all the time. Well, playing all the time, even posting is not good because groups are now becoming very, very closed in the post in social media. You post your concert, but the big public, the big audience is not there. So I think we're lacking something. We need to go out to the street, maybe give away flyers, or go to the parks where there's now a lot of people or a lot of light, for instance, in order to be more present with the society, with the people who wants to listen to us, but they tell us, I don't know where to hear you. We don't play at bars. We like to be or underground. It's hard for us to. We don't want to be famous. It's we want to play, or uh, we want to play like maybe in the houses. Houses are now part places where we can get together to play, to perform. And Venas Rotas, which is a very small place, and musicians, we are in that small space, and people in the street are listening to us, and more people come and they start gathering, and a center emerges. And of course the police then came, and then we need to get out and find a different place. So we are pretty much underground. Jazz Sorca has helped us a lot to say pizza jazz, that's in front of there. There's music in pizza, and music in Jazorca, because there's a need of finding spaces but also playing together. I don't know if we need more networks, but now that we are publishing in 17 Institute on the Impro site, I think it's a good space to share our concerts or sharing our curriculum, because people need to know all the work we have conducted so far. So let's improvise. Let's keep being children, because children improvise all the time. You give a ball or some sticks, like your son Mauricio. Uh, he takes your instruments, or he finds something, and they start to make music. We have to be like children. We're very adults, being adult all the time. We need to improvise, being open, going back to our childhood where everything is happiness. Yeah, I know it, this is kind of Epicurean, but I love it, because I think that it's the need of doing. I was thinking about opening the Garden of Epicura, because I think we need it. We need a place to play and laugh, and just play, have fun, recite, or turning things upside down. I think it's necessary. Also, about musical education in Mexico, it's terrible. It's horrible. We need to raise the bar of mathematicians. Yeah, history, there's a lot of lies and all, but there's a lot of serious people who are history and the science behind music, like the mathematical element of music, but they don't learn music. When my children showed me their exams of music, he couldn't learn music. Like, why should I learn when Beethoven was born? Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but that's not going to help you make music. You need to be able to clap with rhythm. You need to learn other things in terms of performance. But why dates? Why data? Why the exact name of Bach? That's absurd. We need to change the paradigm of musical education in Mexico. We have always tried. Tocht in Cesar Tocht. Um, he well, I we went to that the method the tort method. Guys learn rhythm, melody, silences were there. It's a methodology, and it's just a school here in Coyoacan, but it never grew. Uh, I ran out of time, but well, very quickly. Terry Riley told me that he's very young because he's doing music. He's 89 years old. The guy is super strong, and he hasn't lost his internal child. Sound keeps us alive because we have the illusion of playing the next day. And music is a live organism with harmonics, subharmonics, silence, weird vibration, and so many other things that we do not perceive, but it's there within us, around us. So the future is today. We need to project it. Thank you.
Can revisit later, but it's the importance of place or spaces. And we had George Lipsitz earlier, who's written an important book on this in subordinate spaces, right? So I think it's a usually important question to address. You also talked about the importance of sharing as relations of care, and you talked about sharing not just music but also curriculum. And I think this is interesting, something maybe that we need to do more and talk more about. And more importantly, something that I value a lot is the importance of injecting fun into the politics of making music. It has to be enjoyable. There has to be fun in this too, right? And there's scholarship around this, but there's also a lot of people who just do it and can share their experiences. So thank you. Franco?
Hola, ¿cómo están? Voy a hablar lo más pausadamente que pueda.
Slowly, because I realize that I speak fast, but then I make pauses, so that's weird. So, thank you. The conversations that I had, I was incorporated in this panel. I was not incorporated in this panel originally, but it's an honor. I think about Juanita. She was speaking the other day how she felt that she was trembling, that her emotion it was there, and right now I feel a little bit like that. So I will try to find words to explain this. First of all, this space is interesting for a couple of reasons. There's a theoretical, Matthias Rousselot, he said that the improvisers, we name what we do, we name the process, but also the final result the same way. We call it improvisation. Improvisation is a process, but at the same time, it's a result of something. And that is divided in two terms. I improvise as a process and improvisation as a result. I'm interested in improvisation to see what is going to result from there, what is going to happen after this colloquium is over, what can we agree, how can we get together. For me, improvisation, as I said, is a social occasion. It's a political practice because politics constitutes improvisation itself. And it's an experience of community, an experience of communality, with all that it implies, the good things, the bad things, those that are negotiated in real time. It's not the total answer or the final answer, but it's a good possibility. So from my position in the National University and the University of Córdoba in Argentina, it will be dumb not to say it. I have to reference myself to explain how people like Gonzalo Biffarella, I can now say he's my friend, but he was also my professor. He was one of the first people who, in the framework of a study syllabus, very French, he told us, okay, let's improvise a little bit in an experimental workshop of music. He opened the door to a lot of musicians. He made us improvise when in the composition we were all we were caged in the French classicality. At the time, it was really hard to find texts, of course, Derek Bailey and Pauline Oliveros, but there was nothing in Spanish until through Gonzalo we got the book of Wade Matthews, who is also an important character in this story. Gonzalo was responsible to bring Wade to come to Córdoba and work with a lot of us. And that's when we started to think. When I heard Gonzalo, I said, I want to teach that subject. And when Gonzalo retired, I decided to, well, it was a selection at the time, and I was able to be a teacher of that subject, an experimental workshop with extended techniques of instruments, but most importantly, working collectively and knowing that I have a social responsibility because we were there on a free university, a public university. So we had to study, but at the same time, we had to give back to society to make some extension of something I learned. And that's why I also improvise. Nowadays, now that I have the possibility of being a teacher, well, a professor, I was able to create a free seminar of improvisation per se, not a content in the framework of another subject. No, improvisation per se. A seminar that, in my opinion, is working okay because I work with students of the 5th year of professorship that never took their bodies away from what they were supposed to do as instrumentists or as teachers. So we are working on deconstructing their bodies, deconstructing their minds, working collectively, where we realize that it's not just us, there are other spaces where we can go, where we can move in order to work. From there, both in a recently founded university in the province, we created a space to research, and there we have an experimental program of studies. And I want to open that door for the people here to make it part of the process with this perspective. I am lucky that I studied in a public university in a scholar fashion, but also at the same time, I was also a batterist of a rock band. I have played in bars and in the most underground places in Córdoba, in Argentina. And they have paid me with pizza and beer. Yeah, so I think I have a wide background, a wide vision when it comes to working within academia, because it's sometimes easy to criticize, but sometimes it's hard to resist on the inside. I believe this is part of what I should do from my space, from my incidence space. So I wanted to mention that. Also, there is something about this thing we are creating that's like episodic, like fragments. I see fragments. I see the hand of Benjamin. Yeah, my brain is completing all the parts that I'm not seeing, and this understanding of past university, the Canadian Institute that's been working for a long while, plus these small things that I offer, a portal, this group of work, this sort of task force. It's a very important framework in the University of Córdoba. We're starting with post graduation levels, creating seminars that are more practical seminars. In the National University where I made my PhD, I wrote about improvisation along with Wade. The work needs to be theoretical, not like the freedom we had in the post-graduation in 17 Institute. Of course, I improvise because concerts are not usually part of PhD post graduations. I included a concert upon which I made some reflections, but the concert could not be the thesis of my PhD. But anyway, I was there, I did my concert, and then I discussed as part of it. It's reflecting upon a practice, a contemporary practice. I believe that this is what has me totally excited to have an opportunity. I know that 17 Institute will continue with their symposium, that the Institute in Canada also has plans and plans over plans. But thinking about improvisation, the result of this improvisation, let's not abandon this network. Let's create workshops, seminars, post-graduation spaces, groups in Córdoba, or maybe a Zoom conference in Canada. I mean, let's work together. Let's not abandon this synergy because it's important. It's important as a political practice. Let's just not think about from improvisation only. Let's make a projection because theory has to be an observation of a practice, an observation of reality, and not the other way around. Let's put into practice the practice. As I said before, a phrase of Viviana Fernandez, let's put practice into practice and let's build this improvisation so that it continue to exist, and let's not forget framework. I know I have to wrap up, but there is a student in medicine that wrote a text that's called Ezequiel Gato. He wrote a pandemic and improvisation, and he mentions that improvisation is something that for many it's a bad word, like when politicians are improvising because they don't know what they're doing. But in such a moment as in Argentina, where capitalism and neoliberalism put into play all the tools to make of improvisation a bad thing because they have to control the results of everything, let's try to make improvisation a process, as a space for equality and justice. And with that, I wrap up. Thank you.
Yes. You can give your 36 seconds to someone else if you'd like.
You can have it. No.
You said a lot of really important things, but I just want to underscore one. When you were talking about your background, where you're coming from, and I think a lot of us exist as outliers in academia. Most of us have atypical trajectories as thinkers, as artists. We have a whole variety of experiences with alternative forms of pedagogies, of network pedagogies. And I think that this field is and can be richer because of that. And it's actually a space that allows that and that welcomes it. And I think you've directly and indirectly spoken to that. So thank you. Gonzalo?
Gracias Eric. Y gracias a quien me antecedieron realmente. La verdad que es fantástico tener la posibilidad de hablar y pensar en una proyección de lo que está sucediendo. Siempre tenemos la suerte de decir que los improvisadores van a seguir desarrollando por sí solos caminos, van a encontrar grietas para avanzar, eso me parece fundamental. Pero nosotros tenemos una oportunidad fantástica aquí, todos los que hemos pasado durante esta semana. Y, digamos, los que hemos venido de muy distintos lugares, por supuesto, la gente del 17,
Institute, people from Canada, from the Institute of Canada. And this opportunity would be great to be, if we could take it. We have talked a lot about the rhizoma, the network without verticalities, the possibility of exercising this exchange, of enriching one another. I think that's the projection that we should be looking forward, and maybe creating an agenda, small agenda of meetings. Maybe I'm being schizophrenic, but no, as a manager, is finding ways of getting together, of bringing ourselves together. Yesterday we went to have dinner. It's called Merendero de la Lupita. It's a great place. um, and we were stating possible actions. We were proposing actions where we were all intertwined, all the actors. This idea of stating university programs where we could possibly interact to understand how can we allow creating cracks in the system, as someone mentioned before, creating seminars, creating courses, creating fantastic editions, like Madame Waterman talked about. Ellen, she was fantastic by telling us all about her editorial work and the editorial work done also by 17 Institute in the portal. All this work that is there, and it's super important. The need also in Canada about bringing together English, French, and other languages. Spanish, what if maybe we could translate articles or papers into Spanish, Canadian papers into Spanish? This is part of the network, not with a head, but with a lot of hearts pumping together, fostering this exchange. And this fantastic portal that is now being created by 17 Institute, that is going to be an open door so that we can be present. All of these editions are an open door. And Daniel stated also in a panel yesterday where the frontiers among the spaces, and I speak of our spaces, can be spaces that where we can create connections, permeable spaces. And I think that's fantastic. The idea of a festival that was so important. I mean, the help of Canada was super important, but also the willingness of 17 with all the support. I mean, I know as a manager, that support from Canada was fundamental. We need to find the means to keep this moving and to make this diverse, so that a wider variety of people can be represented in the colloquiums, and that each of these colloquiums and the musical part of the festival can be also permeable, to the extent that we are not becoming closed spaces, to create laboratories, to be open. And another topic that is somehow irritating and creates a lot of discussion. Yesterday, in that conversation, and it's an ongoing conversation since many years ago, I was interested in coming closer to neurosciences, and we were talking about this with with food from the northern part of Mexico, by the way. But well, the idea of talking about artificial intelligence, yeah, we can pretend it's not there, or we can incorporate it because it's going to run over each and every one of us. Before closing, I hope I can have enough seconds to close. To get a neuroscientist, there's a neuroscientist in Latin America that was a dean of our Universidad, Francisco Tamarit. He's one of the maximum experts in neural networks. He said, we are so used to linear growth of technology or exponential, but artificial intelligence, it's 600 times 600 in terms of increment of growth. So it's brutal now that this AI can write a thesis. We can discuss, yeah, but AI doesn't have the heart. Oh, come on. We need to understand we need to talk. We need to discuss about it, because this was part of the conversation. We need to discuss it. We need to put this on the conversation. We need to work upon it with friends, great thinkers, great musicians in Barcelona, Jose Manuel Berenguer. We are now developing the interactionality and the possibility of improvising with artificial intelligence with results that we were not expecting. But I think it's just part of this agenda that hopefully we can develop, and that's it on my behalf. Creo que vamos bien con el tiempo, fueron menos de 7 minutos esa intervención. Bueno, te podemos pasar algunos minutos. Gracias, Gonzalo, por esa intervención. Sí, la discusión sobre la inteligencia artificial definitivamente la tenemos.
Something that we don't necessarily talk about enough when talking about AI is the ecological footprint of the technology. So something that also needs to be in the conversation. Did you want to add something? No. Okay. I said I'd be here to listen, so I'm not going to engage or respond to all the things that you're mentioning, but I just want to make sure that I indicate to you some of the things that strike me as usually important when you're talking about translation. It's something that's really close to my heart as a Francophone who is now on the editorial board of Critical Studies and Improvisation, committed to having more bilingual content. Right, I'm working right now on a bilingual issue, focusing on interviews from Montreal, covering 50 years of improvised music in Montreal. And it's going to be bilingual because there needs to be more of that. And I think their efforts, progress, works in the way, projects in the works to translate between Spanish and English too. So I think that's hugely important. As someone who's learned Portuguese, spent some time in Brazil, I'd like also to see maybe more translation or dialogue across Spanish, Portuguese, and French and English, really. And if we are to make those borders really permeable, I think we need to do more of that. So thank you. Ana, you want to jump in?
Thank you. Bueno, cuando pensaba como en cómo...
When I was thinking about how to speak or what to say, I believe there are a lot of ideas that are revolving around my head. And I wanted to convey this. I was thinking about this food called salpicón. It's a Mexican dish that it's like a remix of many things. So I want to speak from that standpoint, just to mention certain ideas that have been in my head for a while. We are all entities of vibration. We share vibration as a fundamental dimension of existence. We all vibrate perpetually. However, listening is what makes interdependence possible. Listening without without resonance is nothing. Listening to others, listening to the vibrations of others, affecting the vibrations of others and others affecting our vibrations to resonate. Self, we can become an interface for other information, for other energy that flows in this idea of the continuum, which is important in this context, and the idea of being a means, thinking of it as a communication, but also as a medium. I think in that it works quite all right to become something else or someone else, to become this interface to perform, to take another form of sound, and become another shape that is at the same time transformed. I think it's a matter of discovering in a different way the communication with the space we inhabit to find a way of communicating with the environment. And how can we create a reality that is at the same time contingent but also present through sound? A body that it's alive. And I was thinking about this yesterday during the concert that you performed yesterday. It's like a cyborg when it's integrated to a sound producing instrument, which is an extension and an amplificator of the senses, the feelings, internal movements of a person. And this doesn't necessarily means it's a physical fusion. I think it demands a different understanding about awareness. Awareness is also a topic that's important. What happened to us as individuals is also happening to the rest of the people with whom we are playing. Mind, body, instruments, they operate in a certain fashion. And when people play together, many people play together, that reality is created along with the audience, along with the time. And it's important to think what is happening there. It's like a shared consciousness, like a shared awareness that allows us to become something different, at least for a while, live a different reality that's real, but at the same time, it's fictional and it's also self contained. I was thinking on something else that was relevant for me, which is the idea of taking care, caring. At least in Spanish, in Colombia, we use the idea of taking care. In Spanish, is poner cuidado, to place the care somewhere upon someone, and it's caring when you're listening. And at some point, I heard a text of Joanna Hepba that says, and I roughly translated, um, that the most anti-capitalist protest is caring for others and caring for oneself. To take that practice of nursing that traditionally is like a feminine activity of nursing, of nurturing, of caring, of protecting, and taking it very seriously, each of our vulnerabilities, our fragilities, our scarcity, even, and support it, honoring it, and also empowering it to protect one another, protect the others, let others protect us, and enact, that is to practice, to put into practice this idea of care, of bond, the radical bonding and interdependence. And I believe this is fundamental in what we're trying to build here. It's a notion of caring. I believe that it is here, as Hekba says, these practices that are usually considered feminine are relevant. It's important to pay attention to these practices beyond the femininity behind it. So improvisation is a practice that is like a social creation of a series of contingent worlds that we put to the test over and over, always with different results. When we are co-inhabiting could only be loving movement. And when we speak about this social creation in improvisation, not just among musicians, but all the people who are sharing this contingent reality, being caring and being nurturing it's not about being timid or shy. It has to do with being able to be vulnerable, to take the necessary risks to reclaim the space, to reclaim our spaces, and also to place your voice on the table, but at the same time trusting the others, or trusting that the others are going to hold your solo or support your solo with the same care you provided when the others were giving their voice or putting their voice over the table. I think that this care I'm talking about has to do with building trust, not with moving away the conversations that we are creating. It's actually the other way around. So these relationships that are occurring are not necessarily beautiful. We have to face that reality, and that needs separate reflection, or maybe not that separated. It's not necessarily beautiful. It's experimenting how to live together, and improvisation on that regard is key. That fiction that we build at some point where many things are happening, violence can occur. But that doesn't mean that you have to take care away of the equation. Listening is a practice that demands caring. Caring is not necessarily love, but it could be. And not just love for others, like caring, taking care of the conversation, taking care of the music we are creating when we are performing into a space, when we give shape to a certain space. Just to start wrapping up, there is a quote that I found once in Paul Ricoeur, in his essay of memory, and he was quoting Rigouillet. We have to evoke all these arts that Rigouillet presented as art in two sets: dance, theater, music, where the execution is different from the play, from the inscription. These arts demand a training of memory that depends on the execution. A previous work it needs to be needs to be forgotten, and it gives the appearance of improvisation. In the end, you have to forget what you know when you're in front of an audience improvising, and you have to let that knowledge flow through you and to let it out. And I was thinking a lot about these two timings. We agree that which one is the second time when we are here sharing and all. And maybe the question is, what's the first stage? What's this first moment from the perspective of this politics of caring as a way of getting together or being together in this continuum? And that's it. Thank you.
Justo ser los últimos, ¿no? Después, porque, ¿qué más?
It's horrible because after so many interesting things, what could you possibly say? But well, no me quiero enfocar demasiado en el silencio, pero
But listening allows for resonance in conversations, musical or otherwise. Yes, and to listen, as you indicated, is to make room for sounds and ideas to resonate. And you underscore something that I think is important, and to do that is a form of care. It's a form of care, and a form of care, to do an act of care, is a political act too, right? And we need to remind ourselves of that. So thank you. Ricardo.
Ok. Bueno, pues voy a intentar algo.
Out here, I will start with a circular idea or a circle per se. I'm going to read it. I just wrote this down. Improvisation is present presence, current actuality. It occurs, and every time it occurs, it becomes future, and when it's over, it's no longer there. So it's a future because improvisation is a current present, is a presential presence, and in that regard, it occurs and it becomes future, an audible future, and when it's over, it's no longer there. So it's a future because improvisation is a presence, and that's how it occupies the totality of future. It cannot be projected because every time it occurs, it's future, it's audible future, but when it's over, it's no longer future, it's no longer there. It's a future because improvisation is a current presence, and it occupies also the totality of future. It's future, we can listen, and when it's over, it's in existence, it's no longer there. And it's a future because improvisation, it's a current present, a present presence, and it occupies the totality of the future. It's not projected because when it occurs, it's also inexistent. In that measure, it's a presence in the present. In that measure, it occupies the totality of the future. When it's projected, it's just future, audible future, but when it's over, it's no longer there. It's a future because improvisation is presence. Present presence. It occupies the totality of the future, is not projected because every time it's there, it's over. And when it's over, it's no longer there. So it's a future because impro is present presence. It occupies the totality of the future, is not projected because every time it occurs, it's audible future, and when it's over, it's inexistent. It's no longer there. So it's a future because. I also wanted to say other things, by the way. Like more in the present moment, and trying to I was trying to express the projection, the impossible projection, with this loop of words. But no, in all seriousness, I think there are several aspects that are important to continue. It's not even a projection, to make this present more present, to create the possibility of being together, to create a conviviality, getting together. There are many words for this in Spanish. In Colombia, it's called echar carreta, which is an idiomatic expression of when people get together and they speak without a particular purpose. They just speak because that's what they are supposed to be doing. And I think that's important. Important to make it happen. And with all the pressure that's upon me because of the necessity of academic production, we need also informality. I was speaking with some colleagues on how the knowledge that occurs before you act, how knowledge, especially academic knowledge, that is now expressed in beautiful essays that are beautifully written and beautifully read, and yet communication is not there. So creating space was when people get together to talk, and that's a fantastic thing, this is social gatherings or these get-togethers, becoming a people with whom you can have a conversation, and that is relevant because otherwise it's just a resonance of the voice that makes us keep going and going and deep diving into the present of improvisation. Another thing that I think is important, I think Biffarella, from Córdoba, which is generating spaces, places to congregate. Then again, making possible the get together, spaces that are not necessarily virtual but intangible, to extend the present a little bit throughout geography, throughout time. And not just in space, I was thinking also to make links, international links, to tend international bonds, intergenerational bonds. I was also thinking about, though I don't know, but we are always improvising. You're improvising with every person you encounter, and that's what makes the present a continuum. We are supposedly in a non-hierarchical practice, so we are sharing all the time, regardless of gender, age. Like in the relay of yesterday, it's a substantial difference compared to other musical practices. It's super important because it's not like saying, oh, this person is super important because this person is old, so I cannot speak to this person, as if you couldn't talk with a kid because, oh, he's a kid. And not just talking for whatever reason, like speaking as equals. I think that's relevant to make networks, and also intergalactical. We have our astronomer here present. Interspace, intertime. And indeed, being open, because all of this is a fiction. I believe that we have to move along with it and make some emphasis. And well, to wrap up, I think that it's a condition to make all of this possible is what Anna said: care, nursing, speaking. And you said a phrase of, who was it? About caring, a Colombian phrase, an expression, a Colombian expression, to place the care. Also about health and collaboration in Colombia is, me puede colaborar, can you collaborate with me? It's an idiomatic expression of Colombia that is asking for collaboration, which is, can you help me? Me puede colaborar, can you help me? Which is an aspect of care, providing support, mutual support. I would add laughter. We have to use laughter. Let's not take ourselves that seriously, please. Muchas gracias. Y por cierto, ¿qué disciplina con?
Not that I want to not that I want to bring you back to the beginning of your presentation, but yeah, I want to do that for a second. I like what you started with, because you are alerting us to the difficulty of conceptualizing futurities, right? Of thinking about the future. And you were talking or making the connection to the fact that improvisation happens in a moment. But two of our panelists earlier this morning insisted that within improvisation you have multiple temporalities too, right? So I don't think you were in dismissing their point. What I think you're doing is alerting us to the difficulty of thinking about futures. Not only that, I have the privilege of sitting next to him, so I can see what he scribbles, what he writes there. And you did the same thing for the first panel, because this is the second panel today. So please, congratulations. In the process, you're also showing us how to develop creative strategies for coping with the challenge of thinking about futurity. So that's great. Wade.
Para empezar, yo quisiera pedir un aplauso.
Well, acknowledge the interpreter. Well, silence is moving around us, not exactly on our behalf, because we are not exactly being silent at this moment, but the concept of silence, and also to reference the reference to childhood, to children. I would like to share an anecdote that I share with Jason, who has also worked with children and in a very effective way. I have a friend that lives in Toulouse. He was invited to attend some classes that were going to be given to teachers who were going to give classes to children in Lille. And he told me that while in the classroom with the student that was at the end of his preparation before giving classes, he came to the children and said, "Hey, children, in music there is sound, and when there is no sound, what is there?" And one of the children said, "Time." Like, who's learning from whom? Who's teaching who? I believe that the purpose of this is talking about future, the possibility of future, like there are museums that talk about museums. There is something that was stated by Gonzalo, and he has commented upon that in other occasions, which is stating the construction of something from the perspective of improvisation, or even from its practice. When I think about what's becoming an improviser or learning how to be an improviser, especially as a free improviser, but also as an improviser in life, which is what we do, each and every one of us, there is a separation between the content and the practice. This is something I mentioned during the seminar, and actually Kennedy said something that it could be, it's not bad to say it with the current perspective of the elections in the United States. Kennedy said, "There's nothing wrong in building castles above in the sky, but we need to put on a basis." we need to build a foundation. As an improviser, how do you prepare yourself to improvise? Because there is of course, some things that are freely happening in the moment, but there's another part of it. There's another phase, which is developing the capability of reaction, developing a series of resources that are not sound resources. It's resources of another order that have to do with the dynamics of improvisation per se. Resources that allow us to manage materials that can be so vast, and we can manage them because we have the capability, because we built the capabilities to manage that uncertainty. So when you don't know what is going to happen, as humans, we don't know what is going to happen in the future. We have to build certain capacity of foreseeing. We have to build tools so that we can react in the face of uncertainty, whether it's something we foresaw or even if it's something we totally not saw coming. Those are some starting points to improvise music, but are also possibilities when we try to think projects to get closer to improvisation from the perspective of analysis, from the perspective of teaching, from the perspective of praxis. Something that I commented from the perspective of praxis last time I spoke here. Well, the last time I participated on a relay, on a relay, or in a panel, or whatever we call it, a round table, which is not round. But it's a quote from Gary Hagman that jazz musicians, when they are improvising, one way of reaching unicity or unity, of flowing together, is their capability of predict what will happen, and that depends on a number of things. To what extent you know the other musicians, to what extent you know the genre they are playing, whether it's jazz or something else. It's like an idiomatic element to it. But he says that jazz improvisers, what they do is foreseeing a little bit what is going to happen. They start playing as if they knew what is going to happen, even when they don't know. It's the as if, and this is a way of guaranteeing the unity of the performers. I won't express my doubts, but I would like to highlight that indeed, when you are a musician and you've been a musician for a while, you develop a capability of foreseeing the possibilities. The attitude of anticipation can vary, and actually, in a lot of music, of free improvisation music, the idea is not to comply with what you know is going to work, considering your forecast of what is going to happen. It's actually making the deliberate decision of doing something different, coherent with the experimental movement, but you think, okay, this is going to work. How am I gonna know that this is going to work? Because I remember this work in other occasions, but I don't want to be on the memory. I want to be on the present moment. That could be a decision when it comes to improvising. Many times it's not a decision when it comes to organizing a seminar, when you're organizing a course, when you're organizing or trying to manage the collaboration among institutions in different countries, when the budget comes from a state who gives a damn, basically. Yeah, I'm sharing the emotion. So I propose the decision making of the free improviser from the as if, the Gary Hackman as if, to change it and say, what if we do this? What if we did that? This will of saying, okay, this material is new. It's new for me. So what am I going to do with it? How? This is not this is not we have to prepare with the materials. This is not a denial of the preparation, and part of this preparation is individual. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort and experience, but it's also a matter of collaboration. It's learning to collaborate, it's learning to and the third part, which is acceptance, learning acceptance. And acceptance is not resignation. It's I accept this realm because I have to work here. I accept this context because here is where I'm working. This is what we have, so this is where I start. I do not belong to any institution. I have not yet been institutionalized, luckily, but I don't know if that's how it's said in Spanish. Like in Spain, is when you are institutionalized is when you go to the hospital, to the mental hospital. But yeah, I have not yet been institutionalized, and I wanted to highlight that too. When Mr. Biffarella from Córdoba proposes improvisation as a starting point, as a way of framing these challenges. So be it. Thank you.
For a few seconds. This is in some way like a dream panel, because I have these questions for them and they're addressing them as they go along. I think, Wade, what we're going to talk about children in a second, but I'm really glad, because when you mentioned kids, it's something I wanted us to talk about, and then you started with that, so I think this was great. And it links to some of the conversations that took place yesterday. But I think what comes out of your contribution here is that the work that we do has perhaps never been so timely and urgent, right? Individually and collectively, in the current crises that we are, both in the social, political, and cultural moment, because they go together. You can't separate those realms. So thank you. We have 33 minutes for conversations. Because you talked about kids, Wade, you talked about children. I'm going to use my prerogative as moderator and maybe start us off with one question that has to do with the future, that has to do with where the field is going, where it can go, the work that it needs to do. And it comes from an observation and a conversation I had with some people this week. We have not seen many children here in this room for a variety of reasons. How can we engage the youth, right? And what should they contribute to our collective work and efforts? We can't think about the future of improvisation if we don't think about the youth. So I'll throw this question at you, but of course, if there are people in the room that want to, chime in, please do.
Yo realmente nunca he sabido cómo.
I don't know how to work with children, to be honest. I learn from them rather than being able to teach them. I don't know if they actually can learn something from me. And I also, because I'm scared that they can learn so much from me, because they are like sponges and we all have certain attitudes, unconscious attitudes. I think that one of the big problems of musical education is that it's almost impossible to teach or to share capabilities, knowledge, and ideas without uh, sharing values, without teaching those values that are, I mean, the distance between a value and um, a judgment is it's tough. I mean, by when I get along with adults, I always say it doesn't matter if people agree or not with me, because the very moment when they hear something that I wrote and they say I disagree, they are stating the idea and they are questioning or interrogating the idea and they're trying to find their own response, and that's what I value. With adults or among adults, the combination of judgment, idea, concept, ability, I am not afraid of that. In a child, I'm afraid, because when I say something to this child, I don't know if what this child is learning. I don't know if they are going to pay more attention to the tone with which I am stating something, and also because I usually teach things that have to do with improvisation, and maybe I should listen more to children, but that's the only thing I can say about it. Very shortly, maybe teaching them to learn by themselves, to be a self-taught learner, or let them do the teaching. I think that maybe if you leave a child, or if you let a child know that you want to learn from him or her, I think that you are reinforcing or strengthening the trust, and also the validation, to validate what they are thinking. I haven't thought about it, but thanks for. Or maybe improvising with them. Yeah, sure. But well, it's a problem of, I mean, you're a father, like the problem of being a father. You end up, children end up copying you. Especially they copy the things you don't want them to copy from you. Very briefly, an experience I had that was wonderful. A kid is usually playing very freely, but then school comes, and that's when the child becomes more normalized in this Foucaultian school. But the experience that I had, which is amazing, because a child is all body, all chaos, and takes playing very seriously. So in a class, playing with a concept that I learned, the directionality and where the music is going, but also about archetypical curves, the Gauss curve, straight line. At the beginning, and I say this because I had an experience with music in high school, where you were given a flute and three notes in a musical sheet, and it was painful. It was horrible. So how do I do that? A group of children can produce music automatically. Okay, uh, we draw some curves. At the beginning, it's absolute chaos. The second class, they are not speaking. The third class, they are listening among themselves. And what's the aim here? to help them listen, to help them learn how to listen. And it was amazing. I was drawing the curve, and they didn't give, they didn't care until they started playing. And then the posture of having the instruments, maybe a flute or a chair, or they stand up with their instrument and they will look to one another. That's the work with children, because that's what they apply as social beings. It doesn't matter if they're playing uh, an instrument. They need to learn how to coexist. At first, they will enter in silence. I didn't work a lot with children, just in a couple of occasions, but I do this with my child. I draw things to my child, and we play together. And instead of just speaking and speaking and speaking and just shaking the body, it's they can decide. You know what? I will start in some moments to give them the possibility of choosing. I will share a story. I hope to be brief. The ignorant teacher of Rancière. But besides that, I want to go to a very specific moment. Once with Vicky, the astronomer, we went to a concert of an orchestra, what we called to a very marginal place where children were going to play. Well, it was an experience, and we went there, and I was like, how amazing and how horrible simultaneously, because what they did, I mean, I love the concept. They were going to recycle because they were basically lived in a dumping space, and they create a harp, a violin with trash. And afterwards, this in that place, some students were called to give classes. So the kids called me, hey professor, could you come give us a class, and here you can work. And the first thing is, okay, leave all your instruments, let's go to the dumping space, you just gather whatever you like, which was super complicated. It was dangerous, but the point is that they live there. We we were more in danger than them, no? So we brought together all the instruments, and I told them, now imagine what you can do. And one said, but I like the bow of the violin. Well, bring a bow, but we are going to use that bow upon this metal. And we started to build the experience of what Franco said. Learn to listen, learn how to listen different things. It was a small experience of sound gestures, those who were present. Of course, those who were in a some of the politicians that were present, they had already gotten some instruments. And Vicky, you might remember in Belgrano, they mixed an orchestra of children from Paraguay. I don't know if we actually reached a point, but at least these youngsters, ex-students, they said, okay, let's try to change the vision. It happened some days ago. A Colombian friend, González Duque, she was the coordinator of the Commission of Peace, and Lucia is a friend of mine, and now she is managing this Batuta project. And I said, Lucia, stop creating orchestras that create or that move along the colonizing tradition. Let's do something different. Let's try a new type of experience that I know will work better, and that can give us not forming musicians, more like forming people that can be interconnected, that could be relevant to think, especially with those children that in our Latin American realities, I go back to the first thing I said, we are completely implicated in the political, geopolitical point where we are acting, we are surrounded by this poor places. We're talking about a country that has 55% of population under the line of poverty and 30% of uh, people who have no money or who live on the streets. We want to work with them too. We need to keep improvising. Fortunately, it's beauty. It's beautiful to keep improvising with you. We need to pay attention, think about the future. Sorry, I know that there are more questions, but all of this that you were mentioning, there's some things that we need to think again. A situated knowledge, like what are those logics that are related to our contexts and how all of us, we all come from a formal education. What happens, and I think that will be exciting. What happens afterwards from that need of domestication when we think about that first moment, these two moments, these two timings. What's this first moment and how to what happens with education? Because education shows you certain paths that are static, and in Latin America, we've done a lot, we've said a lot, we've talked a lot from the scholar space. I'm thinking about Freire, all these possibilities of building community, and which has to do with self-governance, the theology of liberation, that has the potential of being an inflection point. If this is emerging from the relationship from with God, I think it's okay. What kind of relationship we start among ourselves, like with education, with this processes of learning? It has to be. I mean, I think I learn from improvisation every day, especially at a personal level. It's something that I like. And with improvisation, all these that I previously mentioned are things that I have thought from improvisation. They have improvisation has sparked these questions, this the need of being with others. I think this is something that keeps happening throughout all of our lives. But going back to situated knowledge, it's important to consider from what other spaces could we think. There are some bases of understanding. I am thinking also about a project that I really like, which is Becoming University, which is a project of University Inga. Inga, it's an indigenous community, a multinational indigenous community. It's between Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, the Amazon. And yesterday I remember them because I was in MUAC. MUAC is a museum here in Mexico, and they were talking about this, that we are part of a continuum. They are talking about the forest, but they are talking at the end about all of us, everything that's around us, and we are part of that continuum. How can we exercise, how can we practice this caring, this construction? My point is there's a lot of information, a lot of experiences from Latin America that are super valuable, and not just from the Western uh, knowledge. Very quick, I would like to say something. The best way of teaching a child is not teaching, it's just giving the instruments so that they can play and develop. There are many examples in Bali. They get together, the tribe gets together to do kecak. They create a circle and they start entering a rhythm. Uh, is sort of where the ketchup is super strong, and they do it all the time. They enter into this trance, and that's what they do. But that's what people do. They they play, they invent songs, and they are constantly doing music or making music, and they have the decision of whether becoming Catholics or Buddhists or musicians or whatever. There is a moment where each and every one of us decides what they want to do. Maybe they want to become a violinist, or maybe they only play Vivaldi, which is amazing, but maybe this person can become a great improviser, but we have to let them make that decision. I wanted to tell you that there was an intervention about children throughout these days, and I want to bring it back to the conversation. We have an area in 17 Institute that's in charge of children, about infancy. And thanks to Patricia Cienega, who is in charge, she shared a work she conducted like 20 years ago. And those are workshops of improvisation with work for plays, and it's the quality, and it's devoted for children from 0 to 36 months. It's practically babies, like a dramatic workshop, well, a theatrical workshop. Actually, the work of learning to improvise is not going towards the children or the babies. It's devoted to the adults, because we can be kind of stupid, so to speak. It is focused on parents, so that parents can improvise along with their children. So all of these beautiful, eloquent things, articulate things that you have mentioned about a dynamics, um, uh, about the improvisation in our relations, it's also a calling to regulate our relationship with other areas, also with literature, organizational production, and philosophy, and all, in areas that took improvisation in a challenging way. And what that generates is a matrix of dialogue between improvisation area with other areas, of course here, but somewhere else. So I just wanted to place this into the horizon. Hello. Well, I listen to all of you, and I listen to all of the interventions. I'm a little shy, but I wanted to take the possibility of expressing myself. Improvisation is implicit. We cannot think about impro and thinking about children. Children are improvisation per se. Uh, right now, I was thinking, because when I was trying to make a research with children with ADHD children, I was painting mandalas at the time, and at some point I thought I'm going to do a workshop with children with ADHD children, and it was amazing because all of this came from improvisation. Because yeah, I started working at the time, but at the same time I had the knowledge, but I was very open to the necessities of children, and they did amazing things. The idea and what comes, I mean, we gave up a prompt, and we also worked from the bodily experience. It wasn't just painting, it was creation. They were creation, and creation, improvisation of creation that happens on the spot. And on the other hand, I see this in dance and music. I I don't tell them what to do. Like, what's with the colors of the music? There are some things that means something different for them. They listen more than what we can think of. There are very subtle sounds that they can hear. And that's part of the wonderful thing of this. It's not a matter of teaching children, maybe just bringing the tools closer to them so that they can discover. I think they are like a box of wonders. I think it's one of the things that we need to do in schools. That's my proposal, of bringing art or making art closer to children. I work into dance, but take this closer to younger people. And also in theater, from the movement of the body you can do wonders. And I see this in children. They start playing, they create, they are very much into mystery. I love working with children and dance because it's also an improvisation. And with children, it is amazing. I think it's how to bring this close to them. Well, there are many topics we could cover. A la deriva teatro is what Benjamin mentioned some moments ago about the children, well, babies and improvisation. And people who are listening to us on the transmission, we have the portal that we are building, which is www.17 with number impro.org. 17impro.org. And there the idea is going back to ethos, to contribute to form networks. I wouldn't dare to say a network, but rather a network within other networks, just sparking the interest or channeling the interest. Many things you've said are, especially when it comes to musical education. Since I was very young, I had a relationship and a fascination with sound. Unfortunately for me, I had really good teachers that were amazing improvisers, and they taught me how to improvise in violin and battery. But the problem for me was when I entered to formally study music in the superior school of music. The propedeutical course was horrible, and in the end, unfortunately, I was not accepted in the bachelor's degree. So that's why I studied philosophy and then into relationship with music from another space, and that was amazing. Like going back to that origin of why, when I was a kid, I was making music with non-musicians, people from the theater, with the dancers. So I think that improvisation has a strength. It's always subversive, breaking the educational models. And well, I just wanted to say something to repeat something I said in like 2 or 3 days ago. in this circular or loop expression of Ricardo. I think part of the most important or the most important calling when it comes to critical studies of improvisation or whatever name you want to use it's not thinking about improvisation, but thinking from the logic of improvisation. And Ricardo, just you were talking about present presence, but I would add the present absences. Because Ajay was saying that, and it's part on the agency of now, improvisation also implies this making a way out of no way, which is that absence that it's present, like a potential.
¿Tienen tres participaciones? ¿Yo las paso? ¿Tres más? Sí. Ok, voy a decir rápidamente.
I just wanted to say something very quickly regarding the children. There is something that I don't know how to understand, but it's interesting for me. On one hand, the capability of thinking outside the box, which is not a good expression, but because it doesn't cover the wide variety of possibilities, but this openness to the new that we all know. And on the other hand, if a kid or if you are reading something, I don't know, if you're reading a novel or a recount and you change a word and the kid is like, no, that's not a proper word, that's not how it is. So there's also a need of saying, okay, something is just as always. I don't know how to deal with that. I don't know how is that related to improvisation, if there's a way of taking advantage of this need of regularity of some children. How can we play? How can we stimulate this need of improvisation, but at the same time help him or her find structures? Because a child needs some structure, like the insistence of a child to listen to a story, and this story needs to be the same over and over. Tenemos solo 5 minutos, entonces vamos a tomar las 3 preguntas, vamos a tratar de resolverlas, pero
All right, so let's hear them.
¿Ya? A lo mejor mi intervención va a sonar muy fumada.
Kind of crazy, but when I was listening to Gonzalo, you made me remember a great improviser, a visual artist from Venezuela, diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he created a world, a parallel world in his own domestic space, where we had a series of objects built with cardboard that were not exactly built in such a way that they could use as usual. A telephone, for instance, a telephone that had no sound, a piano without keys, that they were painted in the cardboard, that they were not there. So I was wondering if improvisation is somehow not helping or not contributing to liberate objects from that slavery they are, because they are supposed to function in a certain way. when you were talking about these kids that were living on a dumping space, how can we transform a cardboard into an instrument, and at the same time, on the other hand, the chord of an instrument being left behind or in silence. So I just wanted to say that.
Es Armando Reverón.
Armando Riverón. Yes. Well, first of all, saying thanks. Now that we're wrapping up the questions that emerged throughout all the week, thanks to all the conversations, all the discussions. And I was just, collecting certain ideas, questions, or interrogations, not just to the panel. I'm just uttering some interrogations to the colloquium, if it's possible. And this phrase of Lucrecia Martel, she said that sometimes words get in the way, and she works a lot with sound. And in that relationship with words define us, but they leave behind certain things. There's another writer, I forgot the name, but maybe we shouldn't call it improvisation, because there's a relationship with improvisation that has another way of understanding. There's a polysemic nature to it, with lack of preparations. A couple of days ago, we had a question that resonated on those realms of lack of preparation. And when we focus on improvisation, in the case of children, we have very adult perspectives in the imperative of any truth. When you say there is, or no, the child is there and you are there with the child, so there should be a dialogue. Sometimes we forget that we also are in dialogue with children, and also the perspective from the global north. I have heard, and I haven't seen many things that have to do with us, the territories of ENG. Those are places, and with Manje, those are places of improvisation that have to do with hip hop, with son jarocho, with marimba, with indigenous flutes, and that's not called improvisation. And Papaito, this gaita player in the Atlantic coast of Colombia, and he said, "I don't improvise because I always know what I'm doing." But in my relationship with a gaita, she certifies me, and it's talking about the same thing. I'm sorry, it's gaita, the bagpipe. So we can open ourselves, of course, to these ideas, but at the same time being open to other ideas. I understand the complexities, and of course, I know that you are the ones who make it possible for us to be speaking. But this could be a perspective for the future. Like, where are we? Where are these other contexts? What you mentioned about the Ingas, what's the only thing that appeared of the South? And in terms of musical aesthetic, all the proposals that we have heard so far, which are amazing, and that's it. It's just that perspective. What can we reflect from that space? And well, then again, thanks. This is amazing. Thanks a lot.
I apologize. I wish we could continue. This is super important. In the spirit, because we promise after the person. So, I mean,
there's a tour and there's a band that needs to set up, so we'll just take the question, and then I think we'll need to vacate the room. So Anna.
Thanks so much for that panel. This question was really for Anna. Thank you for your presentation, and my name is Anna too. So talking about improvisation as constantly responding and reacting with nimbleness in the moment and relationships of reciprocity and trust. I think about it in a context of readiness for chaos and crisis. I think about it in a context of like gender transition or poverty. But when we use improvisation as like a model or a social practice or a way of looking at life, my question was, what is the place of rest in your frame of improvisation? And like maybe it's going to come back to an idea of silence or listening, but really I wonder about rest in this context.
Hello. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, we have another several hours ahead of us. Let's continue those conversations informally outside. They just need the room for other things. But thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you to the panelists.